Joined now by Wednesday regular TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. It's his time of year. Darren Dreger, thanks for fitting us in. How you doing?
Yeah, good. A little punch drunk, I'm not going to lie. I mean, when you look at everything that's gone on over the last, few days, but yesterday, Tuesday in particular, it's predictable, and it really starts with the Vancouver Canucks back to the Horvat deal to the New York Islanders, where you anticipate bigger trades like that, where bigger pieces are involved, and that kind of gets the ball rolling. But there's no way any of us could have anticipated that we'd have the flurry of activity that we've had, including what we saw yesterday. I mean, every time you kind of dig into a story and you're trying to get details, oh boy, here comes another one. And then you're working on something else. I mean, we had about 25 balls in the air at one point, and I'm not sure I caught any of them. So it was just one of those days.
Well, Blake and I were talking about it too. This is a fascinating deadline. Like, there have been some really pithy trades here. I mean, the Nashville-Tampa trade on Jeannot, a couple of those Leafs trades, including Sandin, the Edmonton-Nashville trade on Ekholm, and then Los Angeles and Columbus last night, particularly with the backstory of Kopitar on a 4-goal night and after a win being dejected because they're losing the guy who brought them 2 cups. Boy, bottle this, Dregs. We'll take this each and every year during deadline season.
Yeah, and look, I mean, sure, there are TV executives at TSN and likely at Sportsnet that are hand-wringing right now, looking at Friday and going, well, what is going to be left? But honestly, I think in the bigger picture of the entertainment value of it all, we complain all the time, and we hear it from our fans. Well, why isn't the NHL more like the NBA? Well, this is more like the NBA. Now, you don't have the grandstanding where players just say, okay, I want to be traded and here's where I want to go. I mean, I guess we had that to a degree in Patty Kane ending up with the New York Rangers. But, yeah, it's been fascinating. And what I think it is, fellas, is an evolution of cap management here. And, the pro scouts doing their job, but the analytics departments, front office, hockey management, all of that, recognizing and finding a way to monetize even something like a draft pick. Like we saw the Minnesota Wild retain 25% on 2 deals. Well, they monetize that. They can figure out, okay, a third-round draft pick equates to $98,000 or whatever it boils down to. So I think that there's some of that, and then there's also the recognition, maybe because of the arms race in the East, that teams are just like, okay, well, if this is a deal that I can close on today, I damn well better close, because if I don't, somebody else is going to pick my pocket, and I'm going to be scrambling for the next couple of days.
Well, I saw the trailer. I understand we have boy bands coming to TSN on Friday. Seems like you're a keyboard player, Darren? Is did I pick that up right?
Well, yes, and that's putting it loosely. It's funny the things that you do for good friends, right? Normally, of course, this is not something that I engage in. I do have a lighter sense of humor, and I'm not afraid to put the personality out there on occasion. It just seems that everything that goes into this week, the last thing that you'd expect from a hockey insider is to be in costume, playing the keyboard as part of this fantasy band. But that is the genius of James Duthie. I mean, he's the best host in the business as far as I'm concerned. But then on top of that, you've got this creative flair that is second to none. So, yeah, I participated in the shenanigans we recorded last Friday, and I've only seen the same thing you guys have to this point, and that's that teaser, that snippet. So I'm also a bit concerned about what the rest of it is going to look like when it gets aired tomorrow.
The good news is you couldn't possibly be. O-Dog will upstage everyone.
Wow.
A sleeveless O-Dog looks like he is going to steal the show here when it comes to TSN music and boy
and you're
bands.
better than a macaque. I mean, there's no question about it, right? So you won't poop on the set, I'm guessing. I won't.
Jeez, I hope not.
Yeah,
too much coffee. No.
By the way, if any of those pings you need to address, you just let us know.
Sorry. Wow. Yeah, it's people calling, but I I can mute them because I know that they're not of any consequence. They're either other reporters or TSN producers looking for information.
That would be good. That would be good podcasting. If you. Yeah.
If we could just finish up on the spoof that we've done here.
Okay,
so the
sure.
one thing,
yes,
I did the Ottawa Detroit game last night with James and Mike Johnson in studio, and the one thing that he said that I will give myself credit for that was completely and utterly accidental. He said it was remarkable how my finger strokes and I'm kind of make believe playing the keyboard. He said it was ridiculous how not on key because I wasn't actually playing, but the timing was impeccable.
Yes,
because they were laughing out loud at how good it turned out to be from my perspective. So I'll give myself that.
Liberace in a different life.
Yeah,
You give us the latest here. What are you thinking is likely at in development here between the Canucks and the Penguins? Because there seems to be Boeser smoke. There seems to be Miller smoke. None of it's terribly thick just yet, but it is there.
Yeah, I heard this a couple of weeks ago, right? And guys, you remember on this very segment, I said at that time that, the agent had the conversation with Patrick Galvin, and the sense was that, they wanted JT Miller to be part of the successful building of the Canucks moving forward. So, in this case, is it information that drifts back to maybe a conversation that the Penguins and the Vancouver Canucks had back then? Don't know. I mean, you can put the pieces together. I mean, Patrick Galvin obviously is deeply connected to the Penguins organization, likewise with Jimmy Rutherford. And then you look at where the Penguins are right now, and frankly, they're floundering. And the messaging that we've been continually getting from people close to the Pittsburgh Penguins is that they don't want to do anything for rentals. So then if you're not willing to pay a price for a rental, then you have to get into that market where you've got players on term. I mean, I could visualize JT Miller with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I guess the problem that I have with it here, specific to Miller, I mean, he hasn't even kicked into his mega extension at $8 million per. That's a tough one because it's not just about moving a player who might help you moving forward in Miller and what the return is coming back. There's some public relations that goes into this too, right? I mean, in good faith, JT Miller agrees to that lengthy extension in the offseason. The extension doesn't even kick in, and already he's being asked to be part of a potential trade. So I'm not saying no to it. I just feel like it's a little too complex. As for Brock Boeser, as I tweeted, I'm sure you guys saw, I hate using the term 50-50 because you're not really answering a question, right? But the truth is the Vancouver Canucks don't have an answer yet. I'm sure Brock Boeser wants to be traded. He wants to be part of a playoff push. But it is the finances that have always clogged this thing up. The fact that the Vancouver Canucks don't want to retain salary. And my sense is that if somehow Vancouver could find a way to get Boeser's value on his remaining contract down to around $4 million, that there would be a trade fit for Brock Boeser. There would be. So let's see in the next couple of days whether or not that can be realized.
Who would be available from Pittsburgh? Are they looking to jettison anyone? We had heard the name Pierre-Olivier Joseph earlier in the year, Dregs, and not exactly a team flush with prospects or.
That's the issue, right? That's the issue. So, what is it? They're a team that's getting long in the tooth in some respects. So I would think that Ron Hextall would be loath to move out one of his younger NHL players, but. It's not like Vancouver is looking to add a bunch of salary here either. So it does get convoluted. But here's the other thing that we need to, enter into the equation with every trade that involves a player with term, whether it's Vancouver or anyone else. Brokering has become the way of doing business in the NHL. And we see it on almost every single one of these bigger deals now, where it used to be a three-way trade was like headline stuff. Like, oh my God, we got a three-way trade. How great is this? Now it's just standard operating procedure. So I guess in some way, shape, or form, the Vancouver Canucks, if if they can get that money down on Boeser, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are part of this equation, there's always a way. But to pull and to just, speculate on who might come out of the Penguins, that's difficult to do. I haven't heard a name.
And then help us out. There's also the drama between Sullivan and Hextall with regards to Jacob Chychrun that I believe Rob Ross in The Athletic has been chronicling. Is this what we're looking at here, where the coach wants Chychrun and a defenseman and Hextall is more focused on
Because normally
forward?
I would think that freezes things up, but will they still make a trade even though there's opposite forces working there?
Between Hextall and the coach?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yes, because I know Ron Hextall. And that's no lack of respect, I'm sure, for management or ownership to Mike Sullivan. I mean, talk about a decorated head coach and a guy who's earned some swagger inside hockey operations decision-making. But Ron Hextall, if he feels like there's a deal that is to be made that is going to make his team better, he's just going to flat out make that deal. I mean, it wouldn't be entirely at the expense of his head coach. I think that would be ridiculous, just again, given the experience here of Sullivan. And I'm not entirely sure. I haven't asked either guy, so I can't say this or report this definitively. I've heard of some sort of gap between the GM and the head coach in Pittsburgh. I don't know that that's real. I know both guys are professional and both guys want the same thing, and that's to win, but it hasn't gone their way this year.
There's talk that the Leafs might need to trade a defenseman. They've got a lot of defensemen. They've just acquired a couple from Washington and the Canucks. Do you buy into that, or do you think that they love the fact they've got a ton of depth going into the playoffs?
I don't buy into it entirely. I do think that they're cognizant of the fact that history shows you need depth. And you're not talking about, 7, 8 guys. You're talking about potentially 9, 10. We just talked about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think we can all reflect back on when Ron Hainsey was pulled off the scrap heap, right? I mean, he was essentially being pushed out of the NHL. He winds up in Pittsburgh. There's some injuries, and he ends up being a key part of the Penguins winning the Stanley Cup. And that story is often shared when you're looking at depth. But I think that Dubas has some interest in still doing some things. If you follow Kevin Weeks seems to think that they've got to pay close attention to their goaltending now that they've put hands on forwards, defense. Why wouldn't you? That's a challenge for me only in that who else is better out there? Is it John Gibson with the Anaheim Ducks? I mean, depends on what game you've watched John Gibson play. He's had some beauties, but he's had some ugly ones too, right? Korpisalo now dealt to the Los Angeles Kings. Is Cam Talbot an upgrade in terms of insurance? Matt Murray is going to be activated here. They're on their Alberta swing. They've got Edmonton, they've got Calgary, then they've got Vancouver. I don't know that goaltending is an area that needs to be addressed. But as you say, Blake, they've got depth in that position. Maybe it's something as simple as just continuing to try and recoup some of the draft assets that you moved out as part of the 2 bigger deals that have already been done.
Demko's back for the Canucks and looks like himself based on one sample size of a game. Yeah. Is it crazy to think of Demko leaving in the next week here for the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, a couple of days it is for me.
Yeah.
But what define crazy? I mean, we've seen some wild ones already. So again, I'm just not in a position to say. I'd be highly skeptical right now and very doubtful. But what are you getting back in return? Like, it feels like if you're engaging in that trade conversation, you damn well better get a defenseman that is going to move the needle. So what are we talking? A top pair, top 3?
Yeah.
And then what? A 3C? Like a number 3 center? I mean, the assets that are going to need to come back for the Vancouver Canucks to take a big part of what their future could be about next season, the season after, and all of that, it's a head scratcher. But we've seen some wild stuff. How do you connect the dots there, though, right? Because LA would have made some sense aside from the divisional aspect, but they go out and make their deal. I think that teams have made their bed, and Colorado was a good example of that last year. If you're loaded up front and you're good on defense, then you have to be okay with average goaltending. You can win with average goaltending. I think that's what a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs are banking on. Because if they were knee-jerk and worried about Andrei Vasilevsky or the wonderful year that Linus Ullmark is having with the Boston Bruins, then that would have been an area of priority well before now. So I think it applies to Vancouver.
It's the Trent Dilfer approach. Be good in every other part of the game, and somebody average in the middle can make it work.
Well, we see it time and again, gents. It's not necessarily credentialed goaltending. It's who's hot in April.
And there's that, too.
That carries the day. I know they added Puljujärvi, but is everybody waiting on Carolina? Is that the big shoe to drop? Second best team, arguably, in the National Hockey League. I mean, Puljujärvi helps, don't get me wrong, but a lot of talk about needing goals, more goals in that outfit, which has been a bugaboo in the postseason. What do you anticipate they do down in Carolina?
Well, they have to do something, and I believe that Donnie Waddell will do something, and you nailed it. I think that they're going to add in the area of goal scoring. I've heard some connection Nick Schmaltz and the Arizona Coyotes. I mean, good luck making a deal with Billy Armstrong, man, given everything that we've seen and heard around the Jake Chychrun scenario. Wouldn't be surprised. I like that blue line in Carolina. I do. But I wouldn't be surprised if Waddell is working on something on the back end as well. They collectively have been too quiet, and no different than any other owner in pro sport. This owner is engaged and he wants to win. And you do have to be mindful of the opportunity. You know, are the Carolina Hurricanes going to be as good next year as they appear to be right now? There's no guarantee of that when you look around the Eastern Conference. So I'd be gobsmacked if Waddell doesn't do something of significance.
Yeah, I think Miller would be great there. I mean, they love, Brind'Amour loves his forecheckers, right? JT is fantastic at forechecking. He's a hybrid. He can score goals for them. They like players with term. He's got term, but I know it's a huge contract to take on.
They could do it, though. They could do it. For sure they could
I mean, that's one of the teams that could, especially when you take a look at who is coming off the books. Like, they got a lot of money coming off the books, Carolina, too, and a lot of cap space for next year. Hell, they're $30 million in cap space for next year right now. So that's, I mean, if you're moving Miller with this extension, you're doing it for a team like that is a wash in cap space.
You're right.
Forward.
And just to put a bow on the Miller story for today's purpose and maybe for the moment that we're having the conversation,
right?
Until Patrick Allvin comes out and says we're not trading JT Miller, at least not tell you, like, we're just not doing it by the deadline, then we're going to continue to talk about it. And as long as we continue to talk about it, the teams that are interested are going to continue to pester Patrick Allvin. So maybe somebody steps up. I mean, we're not going to know probably until Friday.
Marvelous stuff, Darren. You're getting Bruce for deadline day as well. Yeah.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes. I mean, he's making his media tour. That's one thing that I've always admired about Bruce. He doesn't wallow, right? He's not one of those guys that goes into hiding after, he's been punted off the bench. He finds a way to keep himself in the public eye. So, yeah, I know the execs are pretty happy about it at TSN. I'm sure there'll be some non-Vancouver related storytelling.
Yes.
There won't be any
I was going to say
contractually.
The NDA is strong.
Right. I'm more interested in talking to Bruce in July when the new league year starts and contracts.
Oh, and by the way, I was asked to wear a Bruce There It Is t-shirt, and I refused. No, I'm making that up. I know that's not true. But I think that there will be some Bruce There It Is shenanigans.
I would think. So there you go. You get Bruce There It Is. You get Dregs on the keyboard of the boy band fronted by Sleeveless O'Neill. Who knows? There might be a monkey. Hopefully no one defecates in studio. We'll be riveted, I'm sure, on Friday, Dregs. Thank you for this.
Be well.
Okay, guys. Thank you.